States and adopted in 1791. That was about 4 years after the U.S. Constitution itself had been signed. James Madison, you've heard of him, substantially wrote the First Amendment, so it's appropriate we're discussing it tonight. And this event sponsored by the James Madison Institute and the Federalist Society. Simply put, the First Amendment provides the government cannot pick your religion or promote it, but must let people exercise it. Government cannot impair the right of people to speak or impair the press. Government must let people peaceably assemble, and it must let people bring its complaints to the government. In many ways, these constitutional rights set the United States apart from other countries around the world. Here, you will not be put into prison for what religion you believe in, and you have the right to publicly practice it and encourage others to believe the same as you through your words and your actions. The hallmark of the protection of free speech is to allow the flow of ideas, even those that the overwhelming majority of people might find distasteful or discomforting. Government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society or those in governmental office find the idea offensive or disagreeable. But not all speech is protected by the First Amendment. The Constitution does not protect speech that is lewd, obscene, libelous, and fighting words. Fighting words are those which by their very utterance inflict injury or tend to incite an immediate breach of peace. The court has recognized that child pornography depicting actual children is not protected speech, but has refused to recognize virtual child pornography as a category of unprotected speech. In reviewing what speech has First Amendment protection, the speech itself must be examined. For example, is political speech protected by the First Amendment? Certainly. But a shockingly hardcore pornographic movie containing a model sporting a political tattoo can be found taken as a whole to lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, and therefore falls outside the context and protection of the First Amendment. May someone be found in violation of the law for burning a U.S. flag? If the ordinance is against someone having outdoor fires, yes. But not if the ordinance is against dishonoring the flag. That would be protected speech. So, high school students, what about in high schools? First Amendment rights of students in public school exist, but they're not the same as rights of adults in other settings. The rights of students must be applied in light of the special circumstances of the school environment. For example, a couple of years ago, the court held that a school principal did not violate a student's right to free speech by confiscating a banner she reasonably believed promoted illegal drug use. But once students move out of the public school setting into a different setting, those special considerations given to a school setting do not apply. Here's an important one. Parents, listen up. Do you high school students have a First Amendment right to say anything you want at home without any restrictions by your parents? What do you think? No. Why not? Because your parents are not the government. Remember, these restrictions only pertain to the government. And Kevin, even though I work for the state, I'm still so my governmental cap comes off when I walk in the door. You can't say whatever you want. Our First Amendment protection of free speech provides that we have the right to speak out our viewpoints into a marketplace of ideas. They all compete for persuasive power. If the speech is rejected by the majority, that's okay, but they must be given the right to compete. And while competing, there may be regulations on speech described as time, place, and manner regulation, if content neutral and serve a substantial governmental interest, and do not unreasonably limit alternative avenues of communication. For example, you can have parades, street demonstrations, but you can appropriately have times when you can have those and certain places where you can have those, and the same goes for parks and things like that. So our free speech right does not give us the right to speak anytime, anywhere you want. In courtrooms, we have rules of how you speak. You cannot just stand up anytime you want and say what you want when you want. The same is true in a joint session of Congress when the President of the United States is speaking, as Representative Joe Wilson has found out. It's also true at the University of Florida. We are celebrating Constitution Day here today at FSU. 2 years ago, at a similar Constitution Day forum at the University of Florida, Senator John Kerry brought the address organized by the university's student government. It's not really unlike what we're doing here today. At the conclusion of Senator Kerry's remarks, there was a question and answer session. We'll have one of those later. I hope it goes better than this. An undergraduate student, Mr. Andrew Meyer, was majoring in journalism. He had been a member of the National Honor Society and at the university worked as a columnist for the college paper, Independent Florida Alligator. Meyer spoke for approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds. He questioned Senator Kerry's concession of the 2004 U.S. presidential election, his support or lack of support to impeach President George W. Bush, and the senator's involvement in the Yale University secret society known as Skull and Bones. And he made an off-color remark about President Clinton's sexual activities in connection with his impeachment proceedings. At that point, his microphone was cut off at the request of event organizers. The university police tried to escort him away, but he asked why he was being arrested and shouted, "Get off me! What are you doing? What's going on? I want to stand to listen to the answers to my questions." A fourth officer joined and single-handedly removed Meyer to the back of the auditorium. Meyer yelled, "Why are you arresting me? Help! Help!" Meyer asked to leave. The officers declined. They threatened to taser him if he did not comply. Meyer yelled the now famous line, "Don't tase me, bro!" He seriously miscalculated who he was dealing with on many levels. Maybe he should have yelled, "Don't tase me, sis!" because he was drive-stunned in the shoulder by Officer Nicole Lynn Mallow with her department-issued X-26 taser when he failed to comply. Do you think this violated his freedom of speech? The ACLU thought so. The ACLU's Florida chapter released a statement. Apart from the taser use issues, one must consider the free speech implications of the police officer's actions, said Howard Simon, ACLU of Florida Executive Director. People have a reasonable expectation to ask questions in a public setting, even if they're aggressive and some disagree with their position. That is free speech, plain and simple. Similarly, Kerry had a reasonable expectation to be able to answer those questions. Neither of them was able to exercise their free speech rights due to the police action. Let me be clear. If my microphone is cut off, I will go quiet. You do not need to tase me. Our First Amendment also provides that you may criticize the government without fear of reprisal. Right? Less than a month ago, a lawsuit was filed in the federal